Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. Inside the Set is a series that focuses on the design and decor of stories that excite us and ignite our imaginations, where we get to discuss the collaborations between production designers and set decorators, and hear firsthand accounts of how those works of art came to be, from their inception to ideas on the page through completion, where we sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. I'm Kathy Orlando SDSA. Today, I'm pleased to welcome set decorator Zsuzsanna Sipos and production designer Naaman Marshall. They're here to discuss their imaginative collaboration with the sci-fi action film Alien Romulus. This movie is pure horror. It's terrifying, it's beautiful, and I absolutely loved it. Roger Ebert said that it's the best sci-fi production design in a very long time. So congratulations on that to both of you. And the critics have also praised it as being the best Alien movie since Alien, which is really saying a lot. So that's remarkable. Zsuzsanna and Naaman, you have so much to be proud of. And, you know, there's just so much to talk about. I think we should start by examining the movie and how it works as an homage to the 70s and 80s aesthetic and the original Alien, which was, of course, directed by Ridley Scott. Romulus is a gritty, honest movie. It's not slick. It's not smooth. It's a beautiful thing to watch. Welcome, Zsuzsanna. Welcome, Naaman. Zsuzsanna, let's talk about how you and Naaman met.
I mean, I think he was offered me as a set decorator from
Interesting.
Hungary, you know, and I was reached by the producers, and then we had a chat, and he was kind of happy to work with me. That's to say.
I was nervous.
Love it.
Nervous.
No, she got such glowing reviews from a friend of mine who had just finished a show with her, and I called him and said, "What do you think of Zsuzsi?" You know, because he was a Canadian decorator, and when they would go to Hungary, they would hire a Hungarian decorator, and I really wanted to use a local Hungarian decorator, and I called our friend. And said, "What do you think of Zsuzsi?" And he said, without any sort of doubt or hesitation, he said, "Absolutely, 100%, I would back her." And from that point on, I called Zsuzsi. We started talking, and we had a relationship from day one.
That's amazing. Love that story. And how did you come on the project, Naaman?
Well, I had about 10 years ago, I did a show with Fede called Don't Breathe. And Fede and I got along really well. We took the show to Budapest and did Budapest for Detroit for that movie. So I was familiar with the Budapest. I was familiar with Fede. We got along great. We kind of had the same vibe. And that movie turned out really well for him. So he reached out to me and said, "I don't know what you're up to, but I'd love to know if you're interested in doing Alien with me." And of course I said, "Absolutely."
Amazing. And did you discuss the fact that it would be considered a fan film and that it was going to harken back to the first Alien? Was that a big part of the discussion from the early stages of this project?
Yeah, in fact, that was part of his pitch to me to get me interested in doing it, was the fact that he made it very clear he wanted it to feel like it was in between Alien and Aliens. Yeah. And we were going to make a choice to do that. It wasn't by surprise or luck that's where we played within the genre. So when he said that really kind of sparked my interest, because that's what I was interested in, the Alien franchise.
Yeah, I bet. Can you talk about some of your design influences then, aside from Alien?
Besides, yeah, I mean, we kind of went back to some of the original designers. You know, we went back to Ron Cobb and his shape language and all of that kind of stuff. And then we went, you know, H.R. Giger and all of his tormenting images. We really kind of leaned back into what was the influence to the first films. And then, you know, Legacy was our creature effects company who they were involved in the films in the past. So we kind of went back to a few of those guys. And the, you know, just started reaching back to some of the old thoughts and going through old books and seeing what stuff might have been used or not used. You know, each one of these films has designs that, you know, don't get used. We will design stuff and not use it.
Sure.
And then you could look back at any of these films and see like a pile of just like, oh, maybe on the next one. And we tried to kind of go through and look at some of that stuff and the shape language and the style and the colors.
Yeah, well, you succeeded. It's really beautiful. And I'm very curious, Zsuzsanna, about the materials that you use. And also, how were you handed the sets? Like, were you an empty shell of a ship that Set Deck, you know, had to fill? Or what was that collaboration like? Because it really looks so dense and detailed, and I can't imagine how much prep time you needed to do that, all of that.
I mean, that's what we didn't have, too much prep time.
Right.
That for me, that was also really interesting to know before I, you know, I even knew before I talked to Naaman that it's going to go back to the first one. And I was a big fan of the first one and the second one. And I knew a lot about it. And I knew that they used, you know, for example, what I did as well, they used old radios, but they disassemble and then use the pieces as decor pieces. So basically I bought a lot of radios, we took them apart into small pieces and we painted them and used, you know, the buttons and all of them separately in many of the sets. So my approach was that what had to be designed, we did design it, but I did buy bulk of things, radios, vacuum cleaners, and interesting machinery, what I took apart, painted, and used it as a shape, basically.
Naaman, I noticed that there was like a channel quilting, like a horizontal line that kind of runs through your design, and originally in the Alien, maybe not as long. And I'm just wondering if you could discuss that a little bit. It's a beautiful image, and it kind of runs throughout. Something visually that struck me.
That was one of the visuals that struck me in Alien as I watched the film now, and even more so, you know, years ago. It was a really nice way for Zsuzsi and I to lean back into the old films, and it kind of softens the set and makes it just feel a little bit more ambiguous, where, you know, you can go down the road of everything feeling hard and sci-fi. And I would imagine in the original films, it was a way of covering a wall cheaply, and not so much cheap, but it's a way to cover real estate in a set and create interest without it having to be fully designed and figured out. And it was definitely one of the visual images that we were all looking for in certain areas, just to kind of like put us in a familiar space.
Right. It really worked. Good. I hadn't seen the original since it came out. So when I rewatched it after watching Romulus, I was like, oh, there we go. I see that. So I started to see the connections. It was interesting, though, for me to see yours first and then go back. And what an amazing, both movies are just extraordinary. And I do work in horror a little bit, but I'm not a super horror person that watches horror, but these movies are striking. I mean, they're so philosophical and just wonderful. You know, they have so much going on. So you should both be really proud that you know, you're attached to it, and that it's just so well acclaimed. You know, it's amazing. I did want to talk, Zsuzsanna, about just some of the just more nuts and bolts, like 3D printing, and can you describe to what extent you had to do that, and how does that work, and how much time do you have for that?
As I say, I mean, every movie, what I realized that the prep time is getting less and less. So basically you have to start in manufacture while you are kind of designing the upcoming sets. And then the way I approach all the sci-fis what I've been working on, I like to have an in-house of manufacturing workshop, but also bigger pieces, I give it to companies to make it for us. But I did have my own art directors and draftspersons to draw for me. So basically we had also a lot of 3D printers, and then I had a model making workshop, carpentry workshop, painters, drapery. So it's the team on Alien was around 45 people for that deck. So it was basically a big manufacturing workshop in-house, and it gives you the freedom also if there were last minute things, or you see that there is a piece on the set which needs more work, then you have the people, hands-on people who could do it. And also the set dressers who I'm working with, I'm really lucky because they can also do many things. The upholstery, most of it was done by my set dressers, also the drapes people, but they are really handy. I did teach them how to do it, so we did the upholstery, all of it in-house. So
including those channels that I was those.
Not all
did you
of
do
it.
The walls? Yeah,
the walls, the long walls in that was done by construction, and that was foam as far as I remember, Naaman. But in the Corbel, and we did all of it. It was fake leather.
And when she says 45 people on her crew, it's like 45 highly skilled, like craftsmen when you walk into their shop. I mean, it's what I love about Zsuzsanna's process, and we do it in other countries as well, but she's like the puppet master of like 50 people, and she runs her own department, from the basic construction of it to the design of it. Everything comes out of her world. So at any point you can go over there and it's like a little factory, just crunching stuff out. It's a lot of fun.
That's incredible. That's how it should be. That's great. That's Set Deck. And do you have a designer that works within your department, or are you the designer, Zsuzsanna?
I do have concept artists. I had two on Alien. So basically it's a really close collaboration. So I give them my idea and they add their own ideas to it. And then I tell them if I don't like it, then they go back to the original idea. But yes, basically I love those guys, and they know what I like most of the time. And then they do a few versions, and then we discuss, and then we choose from it.
I thought we could talk about that amazing scene, that the gravity generator scene where Kaylee turns it off. And I read that you had to design 2 different sets. Is that true? One that's horizontal and one that was vertical?
Yeah, what Fede's goal in this whole project was to have as much real live action stuff as possible. So he didn't want to just be putting actors against green screen and with fans and trying to just figure out, how to shoot that later. So the weightlessness in this film was a challenge in the sense of how do we get it to feel right with Kaylee. And, it's the simple stuff like her hair, you can't just build a set horizontal and then have no gravity. So we would build certain sections upright and we'd pull her through it, vertically to get, like, depending on which way the camera was situated. So we would break down every shot and figure out that was an insert set right here that was vertical. And then we would, do a model and block every shot depending on which set worked best. So we actually had like 3 elevator sections built. One of them was the full, 60 feet or 20 meters at least. And then we had a couple that were more like probably 6 meters to kind of pull them through. But it was all about how to get the most realness with the way that gravity affects the person you're trying to make weightless.
Also, I was wondering about how you were able to shoot in a working power plant. I think the Jackson Star Mining Company was actually filmed inside a working plant. How did that go down?
Only in Hungary.
Amazing.
We were able to film there because we were in the cooling section of the power plant. So those aren't actually like anything that's they obviously serving the power plant, and the power plant was maybe a couple hundred yards away. And those were the cooling towers. So when we scouted it, it was just water curtains just running down like radiators. And it was beautiful, a beautiful location. And it was like, you know, we couldn't even imagine they were going to let us film there. And they said, yeah, you can film there, but you just can't turn anything off. So don't expect any sort of, not even turning off a quadrant. It was just like, no, the whole thing is going. And then they said, because of the way that it creates its own atmosphere in there and fog, we can't tell you if you show up on the day and you can't see anything, or if you show up on the day and there's no fog. Like, so we were prepared to augment with fog, and then we were prepared, I mean, sort of, to try to get the fog to move out with fans if that was the case. But we just kind of went into it thinking we're just going to get the best we can. And they really let us just go in there and take over. And, you know, the whole inside field we plowed, and then Zsuzsi came in and did all the, you know, dressing in there and greens and plants. And it was quite an operation to be thinking that we were doing it in a proper power plant servicing people in the country.
So what were some of the biggest challenges from both of you? I would love to hear.
What was really interesting, because I never did it, and I don't think I want to, is that we were we were shooting in scene orders. So basically in the way the story goes. And that made it for me really difficult, because, you know, in a normal world, you would shoot out a set and go on to the next one. But here, this is not what happened. So it was a lot of dressing in a short time. So I was exhausted in the first couple of months.
It was important for Fede he wanted the actors to authentically see a set for the first time, or be able to walk into, you know, for the actors to go into the cockpit for the first time on the day that they were actually filming that scene, and have that like sense of awe. The actors didn't really walk around the sets much towards the final finish days. They all kind of knew what they were getting into, but we, you know, Zsuzsi and I had our last, you know, 3 weeks or 3 days to a week push, and then the actors would come in on the day. And then they would literally film there for like 3 hours and then go like 2 stages over for the rest of the day, because that next lab or that next hallway or whatever was not on that stage. And the whole crew would just shift over and go over there. And like Zsuzsi was saying, it was challenging because it really meant that all the sets had to be done very early.
That is incredible. I don't think I've ever shot like that. I think that there's always the anticipation that maybe it can go down that way, but it doesn't usually happen. So that's pretty amazing that you're able to do that. A lot of pressure on you guys.
A lot of pressure. Yeah. And a lot of our sets we were changeovers. So, you know, there was a couple sets some of the big spaces that I think was pretty successful was the changeovers that we were able to accomplish within sometimes a week, sometimes overnight. Like, you know, there was one set that Zsuzsi took one of the hallways, and it was kind of her pet project. It was like, I'm doing this. And she took one of the hallways overnight and turned it into like the commissary kind of break room. And it was so much fun, even from my point of view, because I walked away from set at like 6 o'clock in the evening. And when I walked in at 7, I had no idea what was going to be there or how it was. And it was like, wow, this is incredible. So she even got me on that one.
That's incredible.
She had a lot of fun because she was making like vending machines, like all the crazy couches and tables and chairs. And we, you know, took carpet and hand painted it and rolled it down the hallways. And it was a cool set.
That really sounds fun.
Yeah.
Good for you. All throughout the night you did that? Do you ever sleep, Zsuzsanna?
I don't need much sleep.
Yeah.
Fortunately.
Yeah, that's what
I'm
happens. I
okay.
think we work on adrenaline, you know.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the color palette. I noticed that it was a very warm orangey hue, very different than the original cool blues. Was that something that came from Fetty or?
I think it was a collaboration with Fede, myself, and he was in Budapest early, and he was so easy to be around and so fun to collaborate with that, like, Zsuzsi and I had a great time with him, and we would just say, like, come over to the shop and look at the lights and tell me what you want. I actually told him, I said, I have no problem. I trusted him, so I had no problem with him sitting directly with my set designers when they were designing a set and saying, oh, it'd be great if a light was there. Someone's going to be sitting there. So he literally would go through every set with the set designers before they were even built. And that's how we have those light sources that kind of feel like, well, how'd they know that was going to be there? It was just because we were all very collaborative in that sense early on. And he was extremely involved with Zsuzsi and finding the fixtures and the temperatures and all of that. Wouldn't you say, Zsuzsi?
No, I mean, he liked all the fixtures, most of the fixtures, because I used, old vintage Soviet lights, and he loved most of them were that, and he loved all of them. I mean, we did build some as well, but most of it was vintage old lights, painted.
Were they converted to LED, or they were incandescent?
Either they were converted to LED, or he used Astera lights, the tubes. And then here, for example, the outside, they either used movie lights or they used LED stripes in some of them to lit.
Yeah, the lighting is really beautiful. Excellent job there. Can you talk about the research station and just how that set came about?
That was a kind of a long process of what is this place? How do we design it to help tell the story? And early on, when things weren't fleshed out, it was a kind of a constant. We'd kind of keep going back to that and say, well, how's this going to work for the story? And if we come outside of it and seeing that thing come by, are we able to tell the story of where they're at within it? And we were always trying to inform kind of the shape language of that with the set builds. So that was like a constant evolving set throughout the film, but we hit a point where we had to kind of like lean into it and like figure it out because of the whole Remus and the Romulus sides of the ship. So we always felt like the Remus was maybe like an older like an older model of the ship, and then the Romulus was a newer version. And so the shape language, it's maybe a little bit more eclectic and antiquated on the Remus side, and maybe slightly more slick and modern on the Romulus side. So those were conversations that I would have with Zsuzsi early on and say, like, when we make that transition down the staircase and then we're into the Romulus, we can now kind of go, into a slightly more modern feel, and it's like new light fixtures and a little brighter. And it was definitely a choice that we were kind of having fun with. It gave us a little bit of a break from just the dirty, dingy of the Remus side, and we could get into the Romulus slightly, but not. We didn't want it to be, this is Romulus side here. And it was just gave us a chance to have our own story in the design.
I love the white.
Yeah, me too. This was definitely one of our most intricate and polished sets throughout the film.
Yeah, it shows. It's beautiful. I'm wondering if you had any space rules or any rules that you followed. I know I did a spaceship thing, and we decided not to have legs on our chairs because you wouldn't have that in space. So did you have any, just running rules that you used?
Rules are to break.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
one rule usually has is that there needs to be a flamingo in at least one set.
That's great.
Yeah. So we have our own rules, but no, we didn't have a whole lot of we didn't have any Bible rules so much, other than Fede just really wanting us to one of the biggest rules was not to over design or overbuild, and not be able to finish them to the highest level. So, I didn't want to run into the problem of designing something too big or too elaborate and then not being able to successfully finish it. And that's not to say that some of our sets couldn't have used another week or two on them to really get them to 100%, but I think that's unrealistic at times to think you're going to get that. But what Zsuzsi and we had what I like to call like the strike zone, and we would really put the energy into that and talk with Fede and make sure that he knew these are the strong points in the set, and we know you're not going to be over here, so please don't go over there. These are shapes and these are a language. So I would say Zsuzsi and I kind of made our own rules about how we were going to get these sets to the level that we did on camera. And I don't think you can do that by not making choices, the hard choices of hey, let's just focus on this area or that area.
Choose your battles.
Yeah, exactly.
Can we talk about the production itself? I know that when you do this kind of specialty show, there's so many extra meetings, special visual effects, special effects, stunts, creature effects. Did you have a lot of meetings? Were you expected to be in all the meetings? Did you learn a lot in these meetings?
Yeah, we had a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
A lot of meetings. And mostly because everyone was dependent on another department. So all of the gags, all of the stuff that Zsuzsi was doing required special effects. It required, a creature, sitting on top of it. It required visual effects, duplication. It was prop driven. Everybody, because Fede wanted to do it in camera, the gags were silly at times. I mean, it was ropes and pulleys to get some of this going. So that starts from the beginning. Luckily, Zsuzsi and I had really good seconds. My supervising art director, Adam, was able to, if he wasn't in there, he was running the operation as if I wasn't. But it was, and Zsuzsi had her sidekicks, and we, because you had to be there. But it was 6 to 8 hours a day sometimes where you just wouldn't even see your department.
Susie, what was your favorite set?
I love the Corbelin because I loved the aesthetic of it, and then the colors. I think that made a difference, that it had some brighter colors, in terms of the use of the yellow and the red. I think that made a bit of difference from the others, and I did enjoy doing that. I mean, there was not an awful lot of time to do it, but I think what we could achieve at the end, that it looked great. Basically, the inspiration for that one for me was the first movie. When she's getting into the spacesuit. That was the idea here as well. And it didn't. I mean, they don't really see, but I had hooks like that, what she had in the first one, and all of that. So you think of pieces, what you could, what could be in a spaceship like this. And it was a mining ship, so I had some mining equipment there and oxygen tanks and all that. So it was a fun set to do. I had a lot of fun, and I used pieces what you wouldn't think of. I mean, some of the racks on the ceiling, those were bicycle stands, so I used that and turned it into a pipe holder. So I like to have fun with pieces. You would never know that it's something else.
And do you collect during prep? Is it just a process of collecting various elements and just starting to play around with things, or do you know exactly what you're going to do with each item, or do you just have a room full of stuff that you play with?
I mean, I thought that, you first I had a room full of stuff, but then when you see the drawings and you see what's gonna happen in each set, then you start to think about what you could put where.
Yeah,
I don't like to have too much. I like to have just as much what's needed. So every show I'm
perfect.
working on, I'm trying to get just as much what I need. A little bit of extra if they need something else, but I don't like to hoard a lot of stuff. So
No.
most of it, what I got, I used it at the end.
But she was at every yard sale, every
Yeah.
swap meet on the weekends. I mean,
On
she
the
came back
weekend, right.
with blisters on her fingers at some point.
Yep.
That's when set decorators do their best work, on the weekend.
Absolutely.
True.
Yeah, that's the fun of it. It really, you did an extraordinary job, both of you. It's really beautiful
Thank
film.
you.
I hope everyone will see it, whether they're horror fans or sci-fi fans or not. It's really worth seeing.
I was quite anxious, what the reaction would be, because it's, for me, it was an honor to participate in an alien movie, because I loved it when I was a child, and I got to be lucky enough to make one. So I was nervous when I was in the cinema watching it, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is cool. It's great.
Yeah, you really don't know, do you, until you see it,
No,
the final product. You really don't know.
I love Fede, so I knew that he has it, but you never know. So from the beginning, he has that charm, and you don't really know at the beginning what his vision is, but you get to understand it. You do see the excitement in his eyes, and he just takes you in, and then you want to do the best what you can for him, because he deserves it, and it was great to do. Fun job. It was exhausting, but worth.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, Fede, luckily I had done one prior with him, and I saw the experience, I'd been through the experience, and at the end of it, you just realize how much of a journey it's going to be, but he's going to deliver at the end. And he's a lot of fun to work with. He's extremely smart, but he has a vision that sometimes is just in his head, and it's a full trust at one point to just be able to like take the ride with him, knowing he's going to get you through the other end. But like Zsuzsanna's saying, you're still a bit nervous when you see the film to see how everybody else did, the music, the editing, the VFX, everything that leaves our hands once you're done on a show. But the beauty with Fede is, that as hard as he pushed you the whole time, those other departments are getting scrutinized just the same. So Fede definitely is the captain of the ship.
Yeah, it really shows. It's really a nice thing to hear about a leader, a true leader. What else would you like to tell us about your experience on this movie?
I have very good, every film has kind of like, it takes you 6-9 months to kind of decompress and actually find the good stuff and say like, oh God, okay, maybe I'll do that again. I didn't have that feeling on this one. I was fortunate to have some of the best crew on it from around the world, that, you just don't get on every film. I think I've never been on a film that had so many fans of the film within the industry. So we had kind of the pick of the litter of people who wanted to work on it, and the excitement that, every day it just felt like what Zsuzsanna was just saying, we were honored and excited to be, asked to do this, be part of the franchise. So all of the people on it felt the same way. And if they didn't, then it was sort of like, cool, but I've got another guy that can jump in if you're really not into it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've said this to many people, but I really enjoyed the partnership that Zsuzsanna and I had on this. It wasn't like a micromanaging. It wasn't like I ever worried about not getting anything done. It was truly just more of an excitement about like, I'm going over there to see what she's doing. That's all. She definitely runs her own operation. And there's times when you're like, oh my God, where is she going? What is she doing? But it was, we just had a really good time. That's kind of what I take away from Alien for Zsuzsi and my design team. And, you know, it's obviously challenging, but we just had a good time and just kind of wrote it out.
And I'm happy because many fans noticed my Easter eggs.
They
'Cause I
did?
They did. Yay.
They did.
I have to watch it again because I couldn't find it. Like,
They did.
so
Can you reveal, Zsuzsanna? No, you can't tell us.
Well,
We have to watch.
no,
okay,
wait.
I'll watch again.
You have to
I'll
do
have to
the
watch
work.
Okay.
No, I mean, he
Well.
did not show all of them, but some of them he did. And then I did see it. A friend of mine sent me a Reddit link and then like, you see? And I'm like, hey.
yeah.
Naaman and Susie, thank you for joining us today on Inside the Set with Set Decor. This has been such a great conversation.
Goodbye.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with Set Decor. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, setdecor.com.